stressful time for us. I know Dennis was at work and came home from work that day. I remember that.
It's the only call I've ever come home from Chicago.
It's the only call I've ever come home from Chicago for. Very trying time, but very. We had tremendous amount of help from our neighboring departments, and that, you know, I feared the worst when I was there on scene, and left to see how bad the weather was doing, and on the way leaving there when everything broke loose, that was probably the most upset I've ever been, or worried that we had firemen injured and civilians injured, killed. I mean, I was thinking the firemen, the way how they survived that was miraculous. We were truly blessed that they weren't, you know, weren't injured.
Well, we had the first group. They were actually on a car accident when it started. They were what, 100 yards away from it when it went by. Yeah. You know, and that was pretty intense for that group. It had to be. I suppose for me, my proudest, you know, you always pre-plan all these little things, was when we found the kid out on the lake in the hunting grounds. That was phenomenal, you know. And that, see, I always the pre-plan. You know, I'm sure we all have our, you know, what would we do if? And my scenario for that was I wasn't gonna start small and let it linger. If we had something for sure, I was gonna call in the cavalry, and that's what I told the deputies was gonna happen. And they, you know, and Sergeant that was there that day, yeah, let's do it. And you know, what was it? A half hour. We had 100 people there from 3 counties, four counties, I think. And you know, they said his core temperature was down low enough. He only had an hour or two to live. For a lost child. It was what, about 8 degrees that night, if I remember right, and a fresh foot of 8, 10, 12 inches of snow on the ground. And how old was he? 8, 10 years old, maybe a little older. Was out and evidently got lost. And
it was in the wildlife area, the Munster hunting grounds, the DNR property that's just south of our station, right next to it.
Actually, it abuts our backyard here, and on one side of it, and goes all the way down to
several hundred acres.
And
he could have been lost.
We got down. We met down in the Lily Lake area where kind of the mother was living, and that's where they more or less went in at the hunting group. And it was already, I don't know, 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and it was going to get. So yeah, I went right to a 4th alarm MAPIS call, and just asked for bodies and help and any equipment that could be used off road. And you know, like always, the help just magically arrives. And it was tense because we found some clothing about halfway into it, so we knew he was out there, and that was confirmed by the mother. It was quite intense. We had the sheriff. We worked so well with the sheriff, and a couple of the Randall's chief was a great help to me that day. And you were, I don't know where you were.
I was gone. I wasn't here.
And but you know, it was just, the outcome was good. And usually when we had, probably the neat part when I told it, we all went over to Randall's firehouse, was a little bigger than this one, and afterwards, and we were all standing around, and you know, normally when that happens, there's always been a big loss. Oh, that was the one time we had all these people together, and it was all good. You know,
yeah.
it was just
tremendous.
I brought a tear to my eye finding his clothes, which is pretty supposedly typical of a lost person.
Right.
They start running, and they get hot, and they start shedding their clothes, which
doesn't help.
What seemed to play out. He said he dropped his mittens and stuff to leave markers. You know, whatever happened, but also we knew we didn't have gloves anymore. You know, and then we found his coat, and so yeah, the boys from Antioch happened to find him underneath the pine tree, and yeah, it was when they called out, and I remember we were yelling at them because they wouldn't answer us. All of a sudden they called out, emergency, emergency. And so now we're calling back, well, what's the emergency? You know, I didn't know if they got hurt, or you know, we didn't know where they were. I knew the area that we had it sectioned off in quadrants, and I knew what quadrant they were in, but we didn't know exactly. And then finally they said, yeah, we got them. And brought them back. Yeah, it's kind of neat.